The NFL draft every year is a great opportunity to make some money and place some bets. What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch back here with another NFL Best Bets video. In this video, my favorite picks, my favorite bets for the 2022 NFL draft. Before I break down and give you my favorite picks for the 2022 NFL draft, don't forget to spike the like button and subscribe to the channel for NFL Best Bets content just like this throughout the entirety of the NFL calendar. Let's waste no more time and let's get to my favorite picks in the NFL draft, starting with Evan Neal, the tackle from Alabama. Over under 6. I am taking the under at plus 100. Now, Evan Neal is a player that personally, and again, I try not to get mixed up with my feelings about the players when I'm placing money on bets and trying to predict the NFL draft. That's how you get yourself in trouble. But with Evan Neal, I, along with many other players and many other people that watch the draft and break down the draft and break down these players, believe that Evan Neal is arguably the best player in the draft. At one point, he was discussed as the number one pick in the NFL draft, as was many others. But Evan Neal, to me, is without a doubt a top 5 pick in this year's draft. There's a number of ways that this draft could unfold, but Evan Neal being in the top 5 is very, very likely here because we have tackle-needy teams in this draft. There has been some buzz from Mike Florio that he could potentially even go first to the Jacksonville Jags. But then you talk about skip number 2, the Lions are not taking a tackle, they'll take a pass rusher of their choosing. Number 3, I could very well see a Nick Caserio, general manager, who is formerly of the Patriots front office, who we know the Patriots love Alabama players, going with a tackle, Evan Neal, who's also started at right tackle and guard throughout his college career. So Evan Neal could go number 3 to the Texans. Number 4 is the Jets. There has been some buzz about the Jets maybe taking a tackle at number 4 because Mekhi Becton's health, and really their right tackle situation still needs to be solved. So Evan Neal could go number 4, although it doesn't feel like number 4 is Evan Neal. It could be Ekwonu, another one of the top prospects at tackle. At number 5, you have the Giants, which is his most likely destination. The Giants are going to let the draft fall to them, but the number one priority we know with their new regime is fixing the offensive line. Brian Daboll, their coach, is formerly from Alabama, so he must have some sort of relationship or at least have knowledge of Evan Neal as a prospect, a player, and a person. That certainly helps. On top of that, you add in his versatility and his championship pedigree. It's a great and a safe pick for the first year and the first pick of that regime. So, I believe he's going in the top 5. If he goes in the top 5, it's most likely to be number 5. I could see number 3, and as a long shot, probably not, but maybe number 1. So, Evan Neal under his prop of 6. I don't see it. I don't see him going past 6. I at least see him being picked number 6, which is the Carolina Panthers, who also need a pass protector. So Evan Neal under 6. My number 2 best bet in this year's draft is Derek Stingley, cornerback of LSU, going over his prop of 8.5. I think it's interesting that Stingley has a prop of 8.5, even though he is actually the favorite to go number 3 to the Texans. But as I've already stated, the Texans are most likely going to go with somebody on the line of scrimmage. I don't buy the rumors that put Stingley and tie him to the Texans. This is why. As a Patriots fan, I know that they value players differently on their draft board. Nick Caserio takes that draft strategy to the Texans. One of the things that they do is they definitely look at injuries. and the availability of players. And that moves players down their board. So I do not see Derek Stingley going to the Patriots regime of the Texans there. On top of that, Lovie Smith is the head coach who primarily runs a cover 2 style of defense, which puts less on a corner's plate to play man-to-man. So Stingley going to the Texans doesn't fit their scheme or their front office logic, in my opinion. So that to me would be a bad bet. On top of that, you look at Stingley potentially going to other spots. He's not going in the top 2. I just said he's not going 3rd. Number 4 to the Jets. The Jets play primarily a Robert Saleh style of the Seattle scheme, which is cover 3 defense. They mostly love, and Joe Douglas loves, offensive linemen and defensive linemen. So most likely they're going to pick offensive line or defensive line. If they go corner, it would more likely be the guy that's 6'2", 6'3" in Sauce Gardner with the length. That's kind of like Richard Sherman-esque to fit that style of scheme and not Derek Stingley. So you eliminate him from number 4. Number 5, okay, the Giants might make sense there, but then you've got to think about the primary need of the Giants, which is offensive line, protecting their quarterback and getting better up front, which we've talked about with Brian Daboll potentially wanting Evan Neal. So number 5, sure, could they go corner there? Maybe, right? But I see Sauce Gardner not going 4th. I see him sliding. I also see the Giants wanting to take a tackle before number 6, Carolina, who their biggest need is tackle or quarterback. So at number 6, they want to take their tackle at number 5. So then we get to number 6, which would mean it's probably going to be a tackle. And if it's not a tackle, it's going to be a trade or a quarterback, Kenny Pickett potentially. So I see Cross, the tackle, going number 6 to Carolina. So then we've got number 7, which is, again, the Giants. Because I believe Gardner is going to slide, I see the Giants going with him. Now, Stingley could go there, and this is where it's a little bit of a risk, but I see them going with the for sure thing in their first year in the regime with Gardner, Sauce Gardner, over a Stingley. That's just my opinion. And then we move to 8, 9, 10, right? Seattle's at 9. They don't pick cornerbacks in the top 10. They just don't. They'll pick a pass rusher. Number 8, Atlanta they have so many needs, and AJ Terrell's arguably the best player on their team, best young player on their team. They're not picking a corner. So he's going to slide. If he doesn't go number 3, like a lot of people think for some reason, and if he doesn't go number 7 to the Giants, he's going to slide outside the top 10. And I think he's going to end up getting picked at number 12 or somewhere down in that teens range, where I think a lot of people are putting him inside the top 5, which I just don't believe. So just basing off the team needs and basing off the logic of each general manager and scheme, it doesn't make a lot of sense for him to go that high. Now, I'm not as confident about this one as Evan Neal, but I do like this one as well, because you also have to factor in the logic of people and the emotions of GMs when they're on the clock. Are you really going to pick the guy that's played 10 games in 2 years inside the top 10? I don't know. So Derek Stingley to go over his prop of 8.5 is one of my best bets, and that is plus money. My third best bet is Kayvon Thibodeaux of Oregon sliding outside the top 5. You can still find his prop potentially at 4.5 or 5.5. Either way, I love it. I do not see Kayvon Thibodeaux going until at least number 9 in this draft. I think a lot of people are pushing him inside the top 5 because of their evaluation of the player and not because of what actually makes sense. And the betting lines and the market are following this logic. When you really think about it, no team has been tied to Thibodeaux inside the top 5. Not even the Jets, who are the most likely team to pick him. It makes sense that they would pick a pass rusher. But the name that we've actually seen them tied to is Jermaine Johnson of FSU. On top of that, my evaluation, on top of many other smart people, is that I think Johnson had better tape than Thibodeaux. So it would make a lot of sense for him to go ahead of Thibodeaux, even though his hype is greater than Johnson's. So I believe that Thibodeaux will fall outside of the top 5. Really, all that has to happen here is him for not to go number 4. That's really it. He just doesn't go number 4, and you win this prop, basically. He's not going number 2. That's going to be Hutchinson or Walker. He's not going number 1, clearly. He's not going number 3, clearly. And he's not going number 5 because they're going to pick a tackle. So really, if he doesn't go 4th to the Jets, who we know they might want to tackle, it could be Ekwonu, it could be Neal. And then we've also heard the other name be Jermaine Johnson. We have not once heard Thibodeau at number 4. We haven't, other than people that are mocking him there based on need and based on their evaluation. So I love this bet. This is one of my favorites on the board. Take his over 4.5. My 4th best bet, which is a little bit more of a long shot. I'm going to look at this in 2 different avenues and 2 different ways to play it. So first, you could go with Ahmad Gardner, Sauce Gardner, going 7th overall specifically, which would be my long shot bet here. It is at, I believe, about plus 300, but you could correct me if I'm wrong there. And then the other play could be Sauce to go over his prop of 5.5, which would then probably lead him to go 7th. So you could almost double down on that and go for a long shot if you like. But I've seen people tie Sauce Gardner to number 4. I don't think he'd go number 3 because the hype here is suggesting that the Texans like Derek Stingley over Gardner. So if I'm wrong, right? If I'm wrong and the Texans do pick a corner, it's most likely going to be Stingley. So knowing that I might be wrong, right? I'm not going to be right 100%. It's going to be Stingley at 3. So the Jets, again, all of the buzz here, we've heard Ekwonu, we've heard Johnson, and we've heard Sauce at number 4. But like, again, the Jets don't usually pick corners this high. Their whole draft logic has been picking them later because the defense doesn't value corners. And with this organization, Joe Douglas really valuing pass rushers and offensive linemen, and with the best offensive linemen likely to fall in the draft to their spot of number 4, it would not make a ton of sense for Gardner to go there. So it's kind of just basing it off of the Jets team philosophy. And I don't believe they're going to pick him there. And I don't believe the Giants are going to pick him 5th because I think they'd rather have their tackle of their choice. If Evan Neal falls to number 5 and the Panthers are behind them at number 6, they're going to pick their choice of tackle before they pick Sauce. Because I don't think the Panthers are picking Sauce because their corner position is fairly strong, where they have some long-term investment there with J.C. Horn, the first-round pick, with Dante Jackson, who they re-signed, and C.J. Henderson, who they traded a third-round pick for last year. So I don't see the Panthers picking corner, which would mean the Giants would comfortably get him at number 7, which is why one of my bets is going with Sauce Gardner to go 7th overall, and then also taking his over 5.5. But it really comes down to if the Jets pick him at number 4 or not. And again, I think the Jets are likely going to go with offensive line or the long shot of Jermaine Johnson. So I have Gardner going over 5.5. My next best bet, which is maybe my favorite, if I had to say that anything here was a lock, which I hate that word for bets because nothing is really a lock. But if I had to say it, this would probably be my favorite bet. It's Ekwonu being drafted before Thibodeau. And this bet you can actually get at minus 110. At least that's where I got it. So I really like this value here. I believe that Ekwonu is going to go somewhere in the top 4. And I don't think Thibodeau is going to go in the top 4. Clearly, I see him falling all the way until number 9. So you look at the possible destinations for Ekwonu. I think number 1 is a real possibility. I have heard that it's rather Trayvon Walker or Ekwonu at number 1. And if not that, it might be Neal. So at number 1, which it appears to be Trayvon Walker, but the long shot for a lot of people right now is Ekwonu. So he could go number 1. Number 2, he's not going number 2. But number 3, the Texans, I believe their top tackle on the board, again, basing it off my knowledge of the Patriots and basing it off my knowledge of a lot of mock drafts and people suggesting that they want to go with a offensive lineman over a corner. Ekwonu is the one that I think they would go with at number 3. If he doesn't go number 3, we have seen reports of Joe Douglas saying it would be hard to pass up Ekwonu at number 4, or at least beat reporters are suggesting that for Joe Douglas at number 4. So ultimately, he just has way more spots he could go than Thibodeau. I think some people might say that Thibodeau has a long shot to go number 2, which I'm just not believing. I think Aiden Hutchinson is nearly a lock to go number 2. So I believe this is a great bet because Ekwonu is clearly a better prospect, in my opinion. And I also believe that he has way more spots and needs for teams that he could go to inside the top 5, which would then push Thibodeau down the board. So Ekwonu to get drafted before Thibodeau. So I've been talking a lot about the Jets already in this video and what they're possibly going to do at number 4. And I brought up one name a lot, which is Jermaine Johnson, the defensive end. I really like this as a long shot bet. Jermaine Johnson to be a top 5 pick. Now, I like it for a couple of reasons. But first and foremost, it's because the Jets, there is a lot of smoke surrounding him going number 4 or number 10 to the Jets. But hear me out for a second. I believe Jermaine Johnson is higher on their board than Thibodeau. A lot of people are mocking Thibodeau at number 4 because they believe the Jets want a defensive end. But what if the defensive end is not Thibodeau, but Jermaine Johnson? Because you connect the two reports of them wanting an offensive tackle or a defensive end on top of them wanting Jermaine Johnson as one of those possibilities, on top of the reporter suggesting they really like Jermaine Johnson at 4 or 10. So what I see happening as a potential scenario is if Neal or Ekwonu go at number 1, Jermaine Johnson would be the pick at number 4. That's the way I see it. And that's a little bit of a long shot, right? But it could happen. On top of that, I could also just see Jermaine Johnson being the pick maybe over a tackle if they just change their mind. So while he's likely to go further down the board a little bit, I do believe that's a great long shot bet because there's reason to believe, based on reports and based on my knowledge of the players and prospects, that Jermaine Johnson could be valued higher than Thibodeau. And with everybody mocking Thibodeau to the Jets, it makes sense for Jermaine Johnson to be number 4. So top 5 pick Jermaine Johnson as a long shot. Take a look. My second to last best bet is Andrew Booth, cornerback, Clemson, going under 30.5. Now, I know there are some concerns about a potential, I believe, sports hernia surgery for Andrew Booth. I don't think that's really a big deal, and I think that might be a smokescreen for a team later in the first round. But I really believe that Andrew Booth is a top 20-25 player in this draft. On top of that, places like the Draft Network actually have him as a top 12 prospect in this draft. So I'm not crazy, and I'm not sure if they're crazy or not, but that would mean that there are other teams that likely value him pretty high. Maybe not every team in the league, but teams that need corners. There's a lot of them in this draft, and I could see him going for sure in the first round. I believe he's a first round talent with his ball skills, with his height, length, and speed. So it just makes sense for him to go in the first round. When we look at all the teams that could potentially pick him, there's a lot of them. I mean, you're talking about the Eagles in the teens that could be the first to select him. You're talking about teams like the Buffalo Bills, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the New England Patriots. There's a lot of teams that need cornerbacks. I'm probably missing others as well that are before 30. There's also at number 29, the Kansas City Chiefs, who could also pick him. They need a cornerback. So Andrew Booth under 30.5, when I saw it, it was almost a little bit puzzling as to why it was there. And I believe it's because of the sports hernia thing that might keep him falling down the board. But I think that there's a lot and too many cornerback needy teams that will look at his tape and say he's a good first round player and that will be willing to select him here. So I think Booth goes in the first round. I'm going to take his under 30.5. Layering the Andrew Booth selection and bet, I will be looking at cornerbacks over 4.5, which is also plus money to bet on for the NFL draft in the first round. That is over 4.5 corners in the first round. So we know that Stingley and sauce are going to be in the first round. There's no question about it. There's at least one team that will be willing to pick both players. Then we look at the third selection, which is Trent McDuffie. I for sure, and I believe every other draft expert out there believes he is a first round pick and likely a top 20 pick. So that would mean that cornerback needy teams at the end of the first round are going to have to move on to other options if they want to go corner. Now, I like 4.5 because, as I suggested, Andrew Booth is likely to go before 30.5. So that means that one more corner would have to be picked in the draft. And there's two players that come to mind. It's Gordon from Washington, the teammate of Trent McDuffie. I know a lot of teams really value Washington corners because of how reliable they are. On top of that, Elam from Florida is another one that's getting buzz at the end of the first round. So all that has to happen is for Gordon or Elam to be picked in the first round and you win this bet. And I know that's easier said than done, but it just logically makes a lot of sense because of how many teams, especially at the end of the first round, who are contenders, who likely don't have big needs in huge areas in terms of the top of their roster. One of the main areas to add depth to your team is always corner. So teams like Kansas City, teams like Buffalo, teams like Tampa Bay, teams like that are very likely to look at corner, given they're contenders, given they have to play great quarterbacks in the playoffs, given they need development, and those teams need corners, right? The Bucs could use a corner. The Bills could use a corner opposite Tre'Davious White. The Chiefs could use a starting corner. Elam makes a lot of sense there. Gordon makes a lot of sense for a place like Buffalo with how much zone. So I really see 5 corners going in the first round. I'm not sure who it's going to be as the 5th guy, but I do see 5 going in the first round, and that's why I like that prop to go over. And those are my final best bets of the 2022 NFL Draft. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and at the very least you learned something if you're not even going to look at these bets. If you want to check out the rest of my best bets, make sure that you head over to my Patreon. Link is in the description where I have listed all of my bets for the NFL Draft this year, and I'm looking to make some money. So make sure you head over to Patreon. You could get the month for $3. I posted it up there for the NFL Draft bets. That is it. I appreciate you guys for watching, and we will see you at the live stream for the NFL Draft Thursday. Peace.